"Open the gates, soldier, he's with me." The order came from a man I had saluted on 3 state occasions, a man whose name opened every door in the Hollings court, and behind that unmoving face of mine, where no one is ever allowed to see, I was already saying no. I knew the name on the list in my breast pocket the way I know the weight of my own rifle. I had read it that morning at the briefing table, 3rd line down, ink still wet from the duty officer's pen. Barred. Do not admit. And here was the Under-Marshal of the household himself, a velvet-collared lord of the inner court, asking me to walk it back as a favor. The man beside him smiled at me through the bars. I want to tell this slowly, because the speed at which it happened is the part people don't believe. From the first word to the moment the whole weight of the institution came down on that forecourt, it was less than 9 minutes. 9 minutes, a barred name and 1 sentry who would not move. That was all. But to understand why 9 minutes was enough, you have to understand the morning and the list, and the man who put me on that gate knowing exactly the kind of pressure that comes through it. My name does not matter much for the telling, but you can call me Sergeant Aldous Crew of the King's Court Guard at Hollings. 14 years on the line. I have stood the West Gate, the River Arch, the long ceremonial post by the stone lions where the tourists gather, and the small unglamorous service gate where the deliveries come and the dangerous decisions get made. That last one is the one that matters. People think the danger lives at the grand front gate under the cameras where the arrogant come to be humbled. The truth is that the front gate is theater. The real test of a guard is the quiet door, the one with no crowd, no phones, no audience to keep a powerful man honest. That is where the favors get asked. That is where, when an institution is going to be tested, it gets tested. The list is the heart of it, so let me explain the list. Every gate guard at Hollings carries a barred list. It is not a long document. It is a single laminated card, reissued each dawn, and it holds the names and the warnings the household has decided must never cross the threshold. The ones with restraining conditions against members of the family, the ones with a documented history of violence on the grounds, the ones flagged by the Protection Service as a credible threat. It is the most boring and the most sacred piece of paper a guard will ever hold. Boring because 99 days out of 100 no name on it ever appears at your gate. Sacred because the one day a name does appear, you are the last thing standing between that name and the people you have sworn to keep. I had read the morning card at the briefing in the gatehouse, the way I read it every morning, the way you check that your boots are laced. Most of it I half knew already. But the 3rd line was new, and it had a star beside it, and a star means the Protection Service did the flagging, not the household, which means a professional, not a clerk, looked at this person and decided he was a danger. Lord Varick-Sallow, barred, star, note, civil order in force, no contact with the principal, do not admit under any pretext. I did not know the face that went with that name. I knew the warning, and a warning with a star is the only kind of order in this building that cannot be outranked by charm, by title, by a hand on your shoulder and a low voice saying he's with me. I knew that too. They teach it to you the first week, and then they spend the next 14 years hoping you remember it on the morning it counts. So, the morning it counted. It was a gray, still day at the service gate on the east side of the court, the side that faces the old kitchen yards and the laundry court and the wall where the ivy has grown for 2 centuries. No tourists come there. A delivery van had left an hour before. The cobbles were wet from an early rain and the air smelled of stone and damp leaf. I stood my post by the iron service gate, a narrower gate than the great front arch, but a true gate, gilded at the crown, hung in a frame older than my grandfather's grandfather. My partner that watch, a young guardsman named Teague, was inside the gatehouse on the telephone log. I was alone at the bars. And then I heard the gravel and footsteps, 2 sets unhurried, the walk of men who expect doors to open ahead of them. I did not turn my head. You learn to see a great deal without turning your head. The first man came into the edge of my vision in the deep blue and silver of household dress, the Under-Marshal's collar bright at his throat, Lord Pelin Hask, the Under-Marshal of the household, the man who runs the family's diary and the family's doors, a man of real power and real reach. The second man walked a half-step behind, in a fine dark coat, hands easy at his sides, a slight smile already arranged on his face as if he had practiced it. I did not know him, but I felt the morning's third line move under my breastbone like a stone turning over. "Sergeant," Lord Hask said, and stopped at the gate and gave me the small nod that great men give the furniture they like. "Good, you're the steady one. Open up, my guest and I are expected at the east wing." Behind my eyes, every alarm I own was already ringing. In front of my eyes, I did not move. The rifle stayed at my shoulder. The gate stayed shut. "My lord," I said, 2 words. In our trade, 2 words is nearly a speech. Hask's smile did not falter, but something in his jaw did. He was a man unused to 2 words where he expected the soft clack of a latch. "Sergeant Crew," he said, and the fact that he knew my name, that he had bothered to know it, told me this was not an accident. He had chosen the quiet gate, and he had chosen me. "Open the gate. He is my guest. He is with me. You can see he is no trouble." He half turned to the man in the dark coat, inviting him to confirm his own harmlessness, and the man spread his hands and smiled wider. "I'm hardly going to bite anyone, Sergeant," the man said, pleasant voice, easy. "It's a misunderstanding, it always is." I did not answer him. I had not been addressed by anyone with the authority to make me answer. I held the gate, and I held my eyes forward, and inside the stillness I was running the only question that mattered. Did I know this man's name? Because a guest of the Under-Marshal arriving at a service gate is an ordinary thing. A nameless smiling man is an ordinary thing. What turned my stomach was the choice of door. Honored guests come to the front. You bring a man to the quiet gate when you do not want the front gate's cameras to see him come in. "I'll need the name, my lord," I said, "for the gate log. It is a true thing that every soul who passes the bars is logged, and it is also the oldest, gentlest way a sentry has of asking a powerful man to say out loud the thing he was hoping not to say." Hask's eyes flicked once to his guest. That flick told me everything. A man with nothing to hide does not check his guest's face before giving a sentry a name. "Sallow," he said after a half-second too long. "Lord Varick Sallow, there, the name. Now open the gate, there's a good man." And the morning's third line stood up inside me and looked me in the eye. I will tell you what discipline actually is, because people use the word like it means standing very still. It does not. A statue stands still and has no choices to make. Discipline is the thing that decides what to do when every easy path and every powerful voice are pulling you one way, and a single laminated card in your breast pocket is pulling you the other. Discipline is choosing the card. In the half-second after Lord Hask said the name, I made the choice that the next 9 minutes would test, and that the rest of my life would be measured against. I did not open the gate. "My lord," I said, and I kept my voice level and low, because a level voice is the last courtesy you can give a powerful man you are about to refuse. "That name is barred. I cannot admit Lord Sallow." For a moment nobody spoke. A pigeon clattered up off the kitchen yard wall. The man in the dark coat, Sallow, let his smile cool by exactly 1 degree, and I marked it. Hask, though, Hask did the thing that powerful men do when a small man tells them no. He laughed, a short, warm laugh as though I had said something charmingly green. "Barred," he repeated. "Sergeant, the list is the list. Yes, fine, I know the list. I helped write half of it, but the list is administrative, it is not scripture. There are conditions on that entry that have been satisfied, there's a process, there are exceptions, and the exception today is standing in front of you in a velvet collar telling you it's handled. Do you understand? It is handled. I am the Under-Marshal of the household. Admitting a guest is the most ordinary thing I do. You are being asked to do the easiest part of your job. Open the gate." It was a good speech. It was, in fact, almost exactly the speech that the rules are built to survive. Because here is the quiet truth about a barred list. It does not exist to stop the strangers. The protection service catches the strangers at the front, on the cameras, in the open. The barred list exists for precisely this. For the day a powerful insider, with a real title and a real reason and a perfectly arranged smile, comes to the quiet gate and explains, reasonably, why the rule should bend for him. The list is the answer to the favor. And a favor, when it comes wrapped in rank, is the most dangerous thing that can arrive at a gate, because every instinct you have to defer, to please, to not make trouble for your betters, is suddenly recruited against the very people you are there to protect. "My lord," I said, "if the conditions have been lifted, the change comes to me through the duty office, and the card is reissued. The card I was issued this morning bars Lord Sallow under a civil order with a protection flag. I have had no amendment. Until I do, I cannot open this gate to him. I'm sorry." I was not, in the way that mattered, sorry at all, but you say it. Hask's warmth went out like a snuffed candle. "You're sorry," he said. "You're sorry. Do you know what's behind this gate, Sergeant? Do you know who I am inside that house? I can have you off this post and back in barracks polishing buttons before your watch ends. I can have you out of this regiment by month's end with a note in your file that follows you to every door in the country. Is that what your sorry is worth to you? A name on a card you can't even be sure they updated against your whole career? Open the gate." There it was, the part where it stops being a favor and starts being a threat, which is the same moment, in my experience, that a man stops being able to pretend the rule doesn't apply to him. Threats are confessions. An honest exception does not need to threaten the sentry. It simply produces the paperwork. I felt the cold settle into me, the good cold, the kind that steadies the hands. "My lord," I said, "you may certainly have me off this post. That is within your power, and I won't dispute it. But I will be taken off this post still refusing to open this gate to a barred name. Those are the only two ways I leave it." And then Sallow spoke, and his voice had changed. The pleasantness was still on the surface, but underneath it had gone flat and patient, the patience of a man who has waited a long time for a door and intends to be on the other side of it before the day is out. "You're a careful man, Sergeant," he said. "I respect that, I do, but you're protecting them from the wrong thing. I'm family in the way that counts. I have history in that house, more history than you'll have if you stand on this cobble for 40 years. There's someone inside who needs to see me, who's been kept from seeing me, by people exactly like you, following cards exactly like that one, who never once asked whether the card was fair." He stepped closer to the bars, and the smile was a thin line now. "All I am asking is to be let in to see someone who would want to see me. Are you so sure you're the good man in this story?" It was clever. It was, I'll admit, the only thing he could have said that found a crack in me, the suggestion that the rule was the cruelty and he was the kindness. For half a breath I felt the old human pull of it, the wish to be the one who lets the sad man in. And then I remembered the star. A star on the card means a professional looked at this man and was afraid, not a clerk with a grudge. Not a feud over a card that was never fair. A protection officer whose entire trade is telling a real threat from a sad story had put a star beside Varric Sallow's name and written "Do not admit under any pretext." Under any pretext. The card had anticipated this exact conversation. The card had heard his speech before I had. And the phrase "someone inside who needs to see me," from a man under a civil order forbidding contact with the principal, that was not the sound of a misunderstanding. That was the sound of the exact danger the order existed to stop, dressed in a dark coat and standing at my gate, asking me to feel sorry for it. "I'm not sure I'm the good man, my lord," I said to him, and it was the only thing I said to Sallow directly that whole morning. "I'm sure I'm the man at the gate, and the gate stays shut." Something moved behind Sallow's eyes then, not anger, worse than anger, a kind of cold reassessment, the look of a man closing one door in his head and opening another. He stepped back from the bars. He glanced just once, along the east wall toward the laundry court and the low service door beyond it, and then back at me, and I understood with a clarity that put ice in my spine that he had not come here only to be let in through this gate. This gate was the polite attempt. This gate, with its borrowed lord and its arranged smile, was the version where everyone got to stay clean. He had other ideas about the wall, and he had just decided I was not going to be moved, and he was already counting cobbles. That is the moment the watch stopped being about a refused order and started being about a live threat on the grounds. And it is the moment I did the second thing discipline is, because the first thing is to hold, but the second thing, the thing that separates a stubborn man from a soldier, is to call it up the chain the instant you know it is bigger than your post. I did not leave the gate. A guard who leaves his gate to raise the alarm has, in that instant, opened the gate. I had a better tool, and I had been carrying it the whole time. At my collar, under the high stiff line of the tunic where it does not show, sits the small pestle of the post radio, and beside it on the gatehouse frame and arm's length to my right, the brass casing of the post alarm, the one a sentry strikes when the situation has outgrown him. I had been weighing both since the word sallow left Lord Hask's mouth. The radio first, because the radio brings thinking men. The alarm second, because the alarm brings running men, and you only bring running men when you are sure. I keyed the radio without lifting my hand from the rifle, 2 fingers, the motion buried in stillness, my voice pitched low and flat and trained. Gatehouse East Service, crew, barred name at the gate, starred entry, Sallow, Varick, escorted by the Under-Marshal. Refusing admission, request the duty officer and protection and a card check on Sallow, immediate. Subject is, I let my eyes go once to that low service door down the wall and back. Subject is showing interest in the east wall. Treat as a live approach. East Service Gatehouse, copy all, came Teague's voice in my ear, fast, no questions, exactly the way it's drilled. Duty officer and protection rolling. Card check up. Hold your gate. Hold your gate. The 3 sweetest words a sentry can hear, because they mean you are no longer alone, and they mean the thing you have been doing with your whole body for the last 4 minutes was right. Lord Hask had heard none of it. The radio is buried. The words are low. The discipline is total. And so he did the thing that, looking back, sealed it. He thought I was merely a stubborn man wearing him down with silence. So he reached out and put his hand flat against the gate, the gilded iron, and gave it a shove, as if to test whether the latch was even truly thrown, as if my whole refusal might be a bluff dressed in a uniform. Enough of this, Hask said. I'll log my own guest. Stand aside, Sergeant. That's a direct order from the Under-Marshal of the household, and you will answer for refusing it. And here is the thing they teach you about a direct order, the thing that takes a young guard years to truly hold in his hands. An order is only an order if the man giving it has the authority to give it. The Under-Marshal runs the diary and the doors of the household. He does not command the protection of the principal, and he cannot, by his own word, lift a starred entry placed by the protection service. He was giving me an order he did not have the authority to give, and an unlawful order is not a lighter thing to refuse than a lawful one. It is a heavier thing to obey. My lord, I said, and now I let a little iron into it because the time for the soft level voice was passing. You do not have the authority to lift a protection flag, and I do not have the authority to obey you if you did it by word at a gate. The duty officer is on his way. Protection is on its way. When they arrive, you may make your case to them, and if they reissue my card, I will open this gate myself and apologize to your guest with my own mouth. Until then, take your hand off the gate. For one suspended second, I did not know which way it would go. Hask's face had gone a deep, dangerous color. Sallow had gone very still, the stillness of a man recalculating odds, and his eyes had left me entirely and were on the long blank stretch of wall, measuring. The cobbles were wet and gray. The ivy hung dead, still on the old stone. And somewhere inside the great house behind me, my voice on the radio was already moving through rooms, lifting heads at desks, turning a quiet Tuesday into something else. Then I heard it, faint at first, under the pigeons and the drip of the eaves, the sound of doors. Not one door. Doors, plural, the particular flat percussion of heavy service doors being put open hard and fast and held, one after another down the East Range, the sound an old building makes when its institution wakes up and starts to move. And under that, the sound that no man at a gate ever forgets the first time he is on the right side of it: boots. The unhurried, deliberate, unstoppable double time of men who are coming, and who are coming because one sentry called, and who do not need to run because there is no longer any version of the next 10 minutes in which they do not arrive. Lord Hask took his hand off the gate. He took it off the gate before he had decided to. I think the body knows things the pride is slow to admit, and he turned toward the sound with the beginning of a frown, the frown of a man who had expected this to be a small private negotiation with a piece of the furniture, and was now hearing the house he thought he ruled make a noise he did not order. Sallow had stopped measuring the wall. Sallow was looking, for the first time, like a man who understood that the door he had spent weeks engineering was about to be answered not by one sentry he could talk past, but by the whole weight of the thing the sentry had been standing for. "What have you done?" Hask said quietly. It was not really a question. It was the sound of a powerful man feeling the floor he stood on become, very suddenly, somebody else's floor. "I held the gate, my lord," I said. "The rest is the house." They came around the corner of the kitchen range first, 2 protection officers in plain dark suits, moving the way protection moves, fast without seeming to hurry, eyes already sorting the scene into people and distances and exits. Behind them, in the field dress of the court guard with the duty officer's sash, came Captain Holly's Vane, my officer that day, a lean gray-haired man who had stood more gates than I had, and refused more favors than I would ever be asked. And behind him, and this is the part where I felt the size of the thing for the first time, standing perfectly still with my heart going like a drum behind a closed door, came more boots. A file of the court guard, 6 of them, coming down the East Range at the double in full kit, sealing the laundry court and the low service door, and the blank stretch of wall that Sallow had been counting, closing every quiet way in that he had spent weeks finding, until the only door left in the whole east wall was the one I was standing in front of, shut. That is what people mean when they say the system rallied. It does not look like an army. It looks like the ordinary people of an institution all turning at once toward the same small point of trouble, because one man at that point did his small job and refused to be the soft place the trouble was looking for. I held a gate, and because I held it instead of folding, a captain and 2 protection officers and a file of guardsmen had a place to bring their weight to bear. Refusal is a door the rest of the house can come through. Surrender is a door it cannot. Captain Vane did not so much as glance at me first. He went straight to the protection officers, took 2 low sentences from the senior one, and then turned to Lord Hask, and when he spoke it was with the flat, exact, unintimidated courtesy that is the most powerful sound in our whole trade. "My Lord Under-Marshal," Vane said. "Captain Vane, duty officer. I'm told you've asked Sergeant Crew to admit a guest. I'm afraid the guest's name carries a protection flag that the sergeant cannot lift and that I cannot lift, and that you, with respect, cannot lift. Only the protection service can lift it, and these officers tell me it stands. So the gate stays shut. I'd ask you to step back from it now, my lord, and let the officers speak with your guest." "My guest," Hask began, and the velvet had cracked clean off his voice, "is a personal friend, and this is a private matter of the family that you, Captain, have no." "My lord." Vane did not raise his voice. He never does. He simply laid the next sentence down on the cobbles like a stone. "The sergeant logged your request and your guest's name on the open radio 4 minutes ago. It is recorded. Whatever this becomes, it becomes with that recording in it. I would think very carefully, my lord, about whether you wish to be the man who pressed a starred name past a sentry at a quiet gate on the record today. I am giving you the chance to be a man who made a mistake and stepped back. Take it. I have thought about that sentence many times since. It is the whole of how an institution protects itself from its own powerful, distilled into a single courtesy. Vane did not arrest the Under-Marshal. He did not need to. He simply made it plain that the thing was now on the record, that the record could not be unmade, and that there were exactly two stories Lord Hask could be in by the end of the day: the man who tried and stepped back, or the man who tried and pushed on, and that only one of them survived. He gave the powerful man the same thing the powerful man had refused to give me: a clean way to choose right. And Lord Hask, to his credit or his cowardice, I have never decided which took it. He stepped back. He stepped back and he straightened his collar and he said, in the cold, flat voice of a man rebuilding his dignity from rubble, "There has plainly been an administrative error. I withdraw my request." And he turned, and he did not look at Sallow at all, not once, which told me more about their friendship than any speech could have. The powerful do not look at the favor that has just become a liability. He walked back up the east range the way he had come, between two of the guardsmen who did not move to stop him, and did not move to help him either. And that was the last I saw of the Under-Marshal of the household at my gate. But the gate had never been about Hask. Hask was the velvet collar the danger wore to get close. The danger itself was still standing on my cobbles, in a fine dark coat, and now that his lord had withdrawn, the smile was entirely gone, and what was left underneath it was the thing the star on my card had been trying to warn me about all morning. Varric Sallow looked at the file of guardsmen sealing the wall. He looked at the two protection officers who had drifted without seeming to, into the exact positions that left him nowhere to be but where he was. He looked at the gate, still shut with me still in front of it. And then he looked at me and he said, very quietly, so quietly that I am not certain the officers heard it, "You think you kept someone safe today. You have no idea who you kept apart." "No, my lord," I said, "I don't. That's the point of the card. I'm not the man who decides who's a danger. I'm the man who holds the line the people who do decide drew. You'd have wanted that to be a stronger line if it had been drawn for you." He had no answer for that. There is no answer for that. The whole of his case had rested on being the one exception the rule should have made, and the rule, held by a sentry too dull to be charmed, had made no exception, and so there was nothing left to be but a barred man at a shut gate with the house arrayed against him. The senior protection officer stepped up to him then, calm and even, and said the words protection says, that he was being detained for breach of a civil order, that he would be conducted off the grounds and handed to the proper authority, that he need say nothing. And Sallow said nothing. He let them take him by the arms. No force, none was needed. Force is what happens when the gate has already failed, and the gate had not failed, and he was walked, unhurried and surrounded, back along the east range and out through the controlled vehicle gate where a marked car had already drawn up, summoned by the same radio call, the same rallying house, the same 4 minutes. I never learned the whole of what he wanted inside. It is not a sentry's business to learn it, and the part I did learn later, I learned only because Captain Vane thought I had earned it. There was a person inside that house under that civil order's protection, kept apart from Varric Sallow by a court, by the protection service, by a line of cards reissued every dawn at gates like mine. The order had a star on it because the people whose trade is fear had looked at this man and been afraid on that person's behalf. That is all I am entitled to say, and all that matters. The line existed for a reason I was never meant to see, and my job was to hold it anyway on faith against a lord, against a sad story, against my own wish to be kind. The name on the barred list stayed barred. That is the entire job. That is the whole of the honor. When the car had gone and the east wall was sealed and quiet again, Captain Vane came back to the gate and stood beside me, and for a while neither of us said anything, which is how soldiers say a great deal. The pigeons came back down to the kitchen yard wall. The eaves dripped. My hands, I noticed, were perfectly steady, which surprised me, because somewhere under the discipline I was shaking like a struck bell. "You logged him on the open radio first thing," Vane said at last. "Not a question." "Yes, sir." Before he'd done anything but stand there and be charming. "He chose the quiet gate, sir," I said. "Honest guests come to the front," and he looked at the wall. Vane nodded slowly, the way a man nods when you have told him the thing he was checking you knew. "He looked at the wall," he repeated. "Good. That's the whole of it, crew. Anyone can refuse a name on a card. The job is to refuse it while a lord of the household is leaning on you and a clever man is making you feel like the villain, and to call it up the chain before you're sure it's bigger than you instead of after. You did both. You held and you called, and you stayed on your gate while you did it. I'll be writing that into the record exactly as it happened." "Lord Hask will be writing his own record, sir," I said, because it had to be said, and because a man should name the thing he's afraid of out loud to his officer. "He told me he could have me off this post by month's end." Vane's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed flat and easy. "He told you that, did he, on the cobbles before the radio went out?" He let a small, grim line touch his mouth. "Then he'll have told it to a recording, Sergeant, the same as everything else this morning. Let me tell you how this house works, because you've earned the truth of it. The Under-Marshal runs the diary. He is a powerful man, and tomorrow he will still be a powerful man, and you would be a fool to think otherwise. But there is one thing in this entire establishment that even the Under-Marshal cannot touch, and it is the protection of the principal, and it is the line of men who hold the gates that protection draws. Because the day a guard can be threatened off his post for refusing a starred name, the line is worthless, and the principal is in a house with no walls. The king knows that better than anyone alive. So no, he will not have you off this post. If anything happens to your posting in the next month, it will be a commendation, and it will come down the chain so plainly that no lord's quiet word can bend it. The house protects the man who protected the house. That is not kindness, crew. That is survival. We are very good at survival." I did not know what to say to that, so I said the only true thing. "I'd have held it for nothing, sir. I'd have held it if it cost me the regiment." "I know," Vane said. "That's why you were on the gate." And that from Captain Vane was a medal. He was right about the record, and he was right about the house. I will not pretend there was no cost. For 2 weeks there was a coolness in certain corridors, a way that certain of the Under-Marshal's people had of not quite seeing me, and a rumor, gentle and poisonous, that Sergeant Crew had made an ugly scene over a clerical mix-up and embarrassed a great man. Rumors are the favor's last weapon, the thing it throws back over its shoulder as it leaves. But the record was the record. The radio log existed. The Protection Service's own account of the morning existed, and it did not call Varric Sallow a clerical mix-up. It called him exactly what the Star had called him, and it noted in the dry language of professionals that the East Service Gate had functioned as designed, and that the duty sergeant's conduct had been. The word they used was exemplary, exemplary in a difficult and high-pressure intrusion attempt by a flagged subject using insider facilitation. Insider facilitation. That is how the Protection Service writes a velvet collar leaning on a gate. The thing was reviewed at a level I never saw and was never meant to. What I saw was the result of it 3 weeks on, and it was the quietest, and to me the largest, thing that came of the whole morning. The dawn briefing card changed. Not my card, the card. The whole regiment's. A new line was added to the standing orders that every gate guard at Hollings reads now at first light, and it is read aloud at the briefing table so that no man can ever say he had not heard it. A barred entry may be lifted only by the issuing authority, in writing, through the duty office. No member of the household of any rank may wave a protection flag by word at a gate. A sentry who refuses such a waiver is acting under standing orders and will be supported. Will be supported. 5 words, written into the standing orders because a lord leaned on a sentry at a quiet gate, and the house decided it would never again leave a man to choose between his post and his career on the cold cobbles alone. I had stood the line on faith that the house would back me. The house wrote it down so that the next man would not have to take it on faith. That is what it means when the system rallies. The boots and the captain and the marked car at the vehicle gate, those were the rally you could see, the 4 minutes of it. But the rally that mattered was the slow one, the one that took 3 weeks and changed a line in a card, the institution looking at the morning, and seeing that it had nearly been opened from the inside by its own powerful, and quietly closing that door for every guard who would ever stand a gate after me. A man held a gate. And the house, which is older and slower and larger than any man, turned that one held gate into a rule, so that the holding would not have to be lonely again. I am still on the line. I have stood the west gate since, and the river arch, and the long ceremonial post by the stone lions where the tourists gather and the young guardsmen learn that the front gate is theater. But I asked, when the rotation came round again, to keep the east service gate when I could. The quiet door. The one with no cameras and no crowd, where the favors come, where the real test of a guard is whether he will be the soft place that a danger, dressed in rank and reason and a practiced smile, is looking for. I keep that gate now the way you keep a thing you understand. I read the card at dawn. I checked the star line first. People who hear the story sometimes ask me whether I was afraid that morning of losing my post, and I tell them the truth, which is that I was, a little the whole time, in the place under the discipline where the fear lives. And then they ask the question they really want answered, which is whether, knowing the cost, knowing the Lord and the threat and the clever sad story, I would refuse the order again. And I do not even have to think about it. There is a person inside that house, behind that wall, who never knew there was a morning when a barred name and a velvet collar came to a quiet gate and asked, reasonably, to be let in. They never knew because the gate held, and the danger never reached the house, and so for them it was an ordinary gray Tuesday with rain on the cobbles and nothing in it to remember. That is the whole reward, and it is enough. The people you keep safest are the ones who never learn they were in danger at all. They go on living their ordinary days, and the line that keeps them ordinary is held, every dawn, at gates they will never see, by men who read a card and checked the star line first and will not open the door to a favor. I would refuse the order again. I would refuse it 100 times. The name on the barred list stays barred, not because the man at the gate is cruel and not because he cannot be moved by a sad story, but because somewhere, someone he will never meet is counting on a line he cannot see, and a stranger in a red tunic decided on a wet gray morning that the line would hold through him. That is not stubbornness. That is the whole of what the uniform is for. The gate stays shut. The house stands. And the man at the door goes back to his post, unmoved, and reads the card again at dawn.